And we're very sorry. And I understand how mistakes can happen, but you guys need to adjust. You need to adjust.
Have they never seen the phenomenal, one of my all-time favorite, National Change Bank ad? The fake ad, the parody ad that Saturday Night Live did, God, 30 years ago. Very funny. The National Change Bank. It was shot just the way you would see a typical bank ad, with the sympathetic bank manager and the customer who has a problem. I really needed change for the parking meter, but all I had was $1. And then they cut to the teller. I could tell the customer was very upset by this situation, but I was able to give her 4 quarters. And it just goes on in the longest way. And the manager's saying things like, let's say you have $1. We can give you 4 quarters. We can give you 10 dimes. We can give you 20 nickels.
Wow.
And it goes on.
The updated version, the 2019 version.
Wait, Robert.
We can give you 3 quarters.
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
You're missing the punchline. So they finally finish it. The bank manager, Kevin Nealon, is the bank manager. And he goes, people ask us, how do you make any money doing this? And the answer is simple: sheer volume.
Yeah, that's funny.
And that business model taken to heart by countless internet startups.
Exactly.
No, I was going to say now the modern 2019 thing would be, you have $1, we can give you 3 quarters, or whatever, 6 dimes or something like that. Yeah.
That's funny. Can I give you my travel story that is actually, it's a win for technology, and it's where, we're in the business of reducing friction through technology in hospitality. So David and I from Fuel were traveling back from Minnesota. Obviously, we packed up our booth, jumped in an Uber because we didn't know about the light rail, to be honest. That sounds like it would have been a much better decision, but we jumped in an Uber and paid a lot more than $2. But it started raining for the first time in Minneapolis that whole week, and apparently everyone was out on the road and driving slowly and crazy. So what should have been a 25-minute drive took about 55 minutes. And we were planning to get to the airport in enough time to get through, but everyone was delayed. So the check-in line was, well, not the check-in line, the security line was forever. So
security line was
finally literally get to a gate as it's meant to start boarding, and nothing's happening. It's one of those, you're rushing, you get there and you're like, oh man. And I really feel like these were kindergartners in disguise were on our plane. All the passengers just were acting like children in terms of everyone had a carry-on bag and they didn't have enough room, and they clearly stated that multiple times. You had to tag it. It was going to get checked to the destination. No one wanted to do it. And then they finally started letting people in, and everyone was rolling up to the ticket person without a tag on their bag. And so the ticket person was having to stop everyone. So this boarding process that would normally take 30 minutes took literally over an hour. And then by that time, Charlotte, which is where we were flying to, had told us we had to wait. So we ended up We were meant to get to Charlotte with a 49-minute layover, and we ended up landing in Charlotte 5 minutes after our next plane started boarding. And Charlotte Airport, you never land in the same concourse as where you're taking off. So
of course.
we
and
land and we're like, okay,
airport that it's built to support.
Right. So we ended up getting lucky. We were meant to land in C and go to E, which would have been a good mile run, right? But we ended up landing in E to landing in D and going to E. So it wasn't so bad, maybe a half an hour run. So we sprinted, took us about, 5-10 minutes to get there. We were the last people on the plane right before they're shutting the door. So we're sitting there, we're like dripping with sweat, and the AC's not working. It was just like miserable. And I'm like, man, I know there's no way our bags are going to make this, not at all. So I pull up the app, and I don't know if you fly American a lot, but they have the bag tracking things. Every time it's scanned anywhere, you can tell where it is. Literally, Charlotte Airport, from the time we landed and they unloaded the bag to getting the bag on our Myrtle Beach destined plane, was 7.5 minutes.
Wow.
They got the bags to our plane quicker than we got to the plane. So, but the technology, having that accessible to us, we landed into, it was stressful, but we landed at the right appropriate time. And I didn't have to worry a bit on that plane that my luggage wasn't going to be there because I had that reassurance from the technology. So it ended up being great. And had I not had the app, it would have been a less optimal situation. Well, end result would have been the same, but it would have had a lot more stress had I not had that technology.
That's fantastic. So really good. Well, here's what I'd like to do, if you guys don't mind. So we were all in Minneapolis, but I am the only person here who actually did not attend HITEC. I was at ROC. I spoke at ROC. I was in a lot of the sessions and the like. So if it's okay, I'm going to be the moderator for this discussion. Because I really have no opinion on anything because I didn't see anything to speak out, apart from the things I saw at ROC. So, I'm going to start with Lauren. What was the coolest thing you saw at HITEC?
The coolest thing that I saw? Oh, you know what? I was a little bit slightly disappointed with most things because it's not about whiz bang stuff anymore. And I'm a whiz bang kind of guy.
Sure.
But I got to say that I saw a strong contingency of on-property softwares like Go Moments and so forth kind of up their game and functionalities that I didn't expect them to have. That being said, it still is underwhelming to many degrees. And the other thing I thought was most exciting was the fact that there was a couple of companies that are trying to create this vertical tech stack arrangement. They're really trying to show how they complete connectivities all the way up the chain. So those, I'm going to have to be soft on my ranting and raving happiness about finding new gadgets and toys because I really didn't see a lot of like boom stuff. It's more like refined stuff. More things are getting refined.
So it was evolutionary, not revolutionary from your perspective.
Yeah, that's how I would take this.
But getting deeper into the customer experience on property.
That there's some attempts, of really trying to break down some things a little bit better and make it a little bit smooth. Just to Stuart's point about the neat technology of tracking your bag. Now I'm seeing a little bit more advanced conversations about more less autonomous and more engaged engagement while people are property level, more opportunities for people to engage is one of the things I saw. So, yeah.
Cool. Fantastic. Robert, same question. What did you take?
Three things.
No, I only asked for one, Robert. That's the
No. There were three in there. Well, the first one I'm going to mention wasn't really tied to the other two, but it was impressive. And this is not pandering to Stuart with Fuel, but Fuel's working with a company called Blue Shift, and Stuart knows I've given him a hard time. I was giving him a hard time in the booth that, I don't know why Blue Shift would work with Fuel, but Blue Shift has some very, very interesting, as far as I can tell, real AI. Now, Stuart said you've got to see this because it's real. It's not just this made up fictional algorithmic sort of thing, but Blue Shift tracks a lot of data points and figures out those correlations and the probabilities of what makes things happen. And I think there are many, many applications for that will make the Fuel product more well-informed and even better for their clients, would be my assessment. Fair, Stuart?
I mean, that's very fair. Yeah, I want to get those guys on the show at some point that just explain. We're essentially creating a golden record of everything, every interaction you have with the consumer. So not just your demographic information and stay information, but interaction information. Anytime they hit a page on the website or click on an email or do anything with your brand, pick up the phone, anything, pushing that into a single record, and then the AI, like Robert said, is looking for patterns automatically. Machine learning is saying, okay, people get from point A to point B. How do they do that? And it recognizes similarities between different people. And then it kind of short circuits that when it starts seeing the beginning of that pattern happening with someone, it knows how to nudge them faster to the end point. It's really, really slick.
And if you do it properly, it's not just let's sell them something they don't need, but it's almost like, hey, you don't have to go get lost in that cul-de-sac for a while, which we've seen some people do and then find their way back. You can all of a sudden start providing some great value. So I thought that was very, very cool. There are a lot of other AI type things, but the Blueshift stuff was pretty cool, and the way that you can pull in data from a lot of different sorts. Almost you got data, let's bring it in is a great thing. The second one is, I think last year it was kind of the happy sort of thing where, hey, we've got a data stream, kind of the Citizen M with their enterprise service bus saying, this is our data and we're going to bolt services onto it, sort of thing. I thought that very, very, very good. Was speaking, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, with the Shiji guys who have acquired a lot of companies that do a lot
or put a lot of money into a lot of companies.
Yeah, that's the vertical stacking stuff.
Yep. But they are working on basically redoing a lot of their platforms and turning them all into these microservices, right? So the data stream with all these microservices around, that is going to be the future of this. And that's how you're going to break down all of these, legacy property management systems, I predict. And it's started, which is great. The third one was Beekeeper. And people might not be familiar with Beekeeper. Beekeeper is, the way I would describe it, they probably wouldn't describe it this way, is almost a dashboard layer. And it started out really as kind of a back of house communication platform for your staff. So if you will, the staff can bring their own device, and you could have community chat boards and all sorts of other things. Well, now they're doing things like schedule swapping and all these things that can really help the employees. And now they're tying in, and similar to Alice, they were very, very smart. They didn't start with all the PMS integrations, which are so complicated and so proprietary and so costly. They just started off, and they don't just do hospitality. They're across a lot of industries. So it's this whole employee engagement. How do you streamline this, help them communicate more effectively? Well, now they're kind of doing this, I'd call it a dashboard layer, and now starting to tap into, there's Kronos for the shift scheduling. There's the property management system for numbers of arrivals and departures and what's clean and vacant. A lot of that stuff hasn't happened, but you see kind of that level of intelligence, or that level of connectivity across all these different platforms for a bring your own device type thing for employees, with kind of this microservices data layer. And then combine it with like the AI type stuff that Blueshift's doing with Fuel, and you can then start going, these dots maybe are going to start connecting and get pretty interesting. So that was my takeaway.
Just one last time.
Beekeeper.
Beekeeper.
Yeah.
They were there last year. They were one of the 20X companies last year.
Right.
More standings. I spoke with them last year, but they definitely evolved their product a lot in 12 months.
Oh yeah, and I talked to their VP of product development, who's out of I think Zurich, and they are across a lot of verticals and things like that. But he's really smart guy, and they're taking a really smart approach to developing these things. And there are examples like emergencies in a Hurricane Irma. Right? It's Florida, things are bad. Hotels they're communicating with their staffs. Here's what's going on. Checking with the staffs, are you okay? Right? And they have all sorts of things like, forms where you can send things out, or their read receipts and things like that. direct chat. So a lot of these things, and I've always been a fan of Alice and things like that, which is great because that's just kind of guest communication, ticket tracking, which again, they hate when I describe Alice as a really simple ticket tracker, but that's a huge compliment because they took a really important process, simplified it, and made it work. Well, these guys could do all that stuff, and you don't need. Yes, you could call that service. You don't need their UI that is only specifically, kind of siloed into we're talking to guests and getting the message back of house to the engineering department. This, you can do a lot of very creative things. Again, tacking together all these services you may have from multiple platforms, right? Which could be very, very cool. So anyway, so it was good.
Cool. All right, Stuart, same question.
My 10. Okay, so Lauren had 1. Robert had 3, so I got like 7 things. No, I'm just kidding. So overall,
he's going to talk about Stuart's going to talk about the makeup booth where they had, and these guys know that I was obsessed with it because I love
Robert with.
Every time Robert came by,
every time Robert was talking about it to everyone.
No, and the very nice, the women from Jonas who cleared it up and were sure, they said this was like a mall kiosk. They were selling rejuvenating products for women at this show, and you're like, why are they those sorts of booths amazing? Absolutely amazing. They had people there. They were pretty busy the whole time. So I don't.
So there was the other retail booth there, the guy that was selling the cell phone accessories, right? And I swear, no less than 12 different people told me that guy is a great salesperson. So if you're looking for a winner in the show, probably the sales guy from the cell phone accessory place, because he did a good job selling people.
Lauren didn't happen by there. It was kind of in a back corner.
Lauren
would have just bought all the
everything, gadgets and whiz bang and stuff. Yeah, it was cool. I would say so.
I don't already have them.
Probably do. You could sell him some stuff. To answer the question, though, I feel like I was very underwhelmed this year. I mean, in terms of the scale of the show, if no one's ever been to High Tech, it's impressive, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. But I don't feel like there was a lot of innovation this year going on. Like there wasn't anything that shocked me like it has in previous years. When I see, the first time I saw a robot running around the show floor or something, I was like, that's cool. Just got my nerd juices flowing. And there was nothing like that this year. But I felt like, to your earlier point, that there was a lot of vendors that have matured, that, they've developed an idea into something that's a little more tangible, a little more effective. So I'd say some standout things that I saw that I think are going to have impacts. I think Happy and that type of technology is going to have an impact, this kind of data stream thing, because it sort of solves some of the connectivity problems. But one of the things I thought, and why I'm hot on Happy, is I feel like they get how to make noise in the industry, and I think that's important. So their booth this year, and I was talking to Lewis there, he said they'd originally had a 10 by 20, and then he's got another company, Stay My Way, which I'll talk about in a second, but they had seen that they could expand that last minute to a 20 by 30, and that obviously gets expensive. So what he did, which was really good because it illustrated what they do, is he had this 20 by 30 booth, and then he asked his connection partners, people that have already integrated to him, to sit on the corners. So the booth itself had this big funnel going up, which was like illustrating what Happy is. It was a data funnel with the big Happy logo that you could see from miles around. And then there were lines connecting that to each of his connection partners. And so you could go in and talk to each of these people and how they're interacting with Happy, how it's helping their business. But they also subsidized the booth for him as well. So it was really smart from a marketing perspective for them to do that. It got them, I think, a lot more visibility than they would have had. So I like that. I liked Stay My Way, which was right behind them. So they're doing something interesting. Everyone's looking at keyless entry as a potential investment, and very big potential investment, right? Because if you're using locks that you've got to go replace all of your locks in a 500 unit property, that's a huge capex, right? So they what Stay My Way is doing is they retrofit any key. So it doesn't matter who your manufacturer is. They can come in and put a little chip in for a fraction of the price of replacing it, and then you can have the same functionality. So I think that's pretty cool. And the other part that they add, so we're working with them, full disclosure, to integrate their locking technology with our app. We've already got Asset Abloy and App Onity, but we're going to add them next. But they also have a verification process, which is pretty cool, where someone has to take a photo of a passport or a driver's license and then do the real-time selfie to verify that it is the person, to eliminate some of the chargeback situations that have been going on where people don't actually come to the front desk. So that's kind of innovative. And then the other thing that I thought was going to happen before the show, and I did see some of it, probably not as much as I'd like, but I felt like the PMS companies finally are getting it. They're finally understanding that they have been part of the problem of why the hospitality industry is so far behind other industries from a technology standpoint. We integrate with a lot of them. We try to play Switzerland for sure, but our conversations this year changed a lot. We always go around and chat with the people, but this year, folks like Opera and Agilysys, who we integrate with, but we've never really had a partnership with just another vendor. They started trying to ask us about our products and asking about how could we work together? How could they recommend our product? And stuff.
They asked about you, not just get in the queue, make sure your check clears.
Right. Right. And they were talking about specific partnerships. So to the point where
sometime maybe next March.
So we had folks to come by our booth from one said that Opera sent them. Opera said, "Hey, these guys are doing what you're looking for," and they integrate.
These are the droids you're looking for.
Never referred anyone to us, right? We had a handful from Springer Miller because we work with Springer Miller pretty tightly. I think there was one from Maestro as well. So PMS companies are saying, "Hey, we understand we can't do everything. We're not a walled garden anymore. We have to work with providers, and these are best-in-class solutions." So that was a pleasant surprise and very good for our business for sure. So yeah, but beyond that, I don't know. It was kind of meh.
But it's interesting because as you guys were talking, I mean, I heard a few themes emerge because you all talked about similar concepts in there, right? Mm-hmm. This was all very evolutionary versus revolutionary.
Sure.
We're talking about getting deeper, putting technology deeper into the customer value chain, the guest value chain, making it more seamless, maybe providing greater employee support, putting mobile to use in a practical way on property. The PMSs are getting it. They're looking to connect these things more seamlessly, maybe make for a better guest experience. And it sounds like it's a sign of we're in a maturing vendor space for at least what the current state of tech is, right? I mean,
for sure.
It at least in my experience, I think we've all had the same experience. Tech does a lot of it, ramps up like hell, then it plateaus for a little bit, and then the next innovation comes along that starts the next cycle going, right? Yeah. But maybe we're in sort of that plateau space where things are maturing, people are tightening up the integrations, et cetera. I mean, is that a fair restatement of what you all saw, or did I miss something there?
No, I think it is. I think in a strange way, it's a kind of our version of merger. It's that gateway to entry into hospitality to sell something. People are in this new shiny penny fatigue. I mean, we have all been to high techs where there are rows of one-time onlys that show up, and this is their pitch, this is their thing, and there's 20 flavors of whatever it is that's the hot topic thing, and then next year maybe one survived or none survived or three consolidated or something. And this year, and I'm not taking anything away from high tech, there were empty rows on the ends. There was holes in the floor plan where there were lack of vendors and so forth, which I had never seen before. I mean, there's always been empty spaces in the corner, but
I have a question about that specifically because I'm really curious about this. I have often used high tech as an indicator, and not a vaguely leading indicator of where the industry is from a business cycle perspective, right? I mean, anybody who was at high tech in 2009, which Lauren, I'm sure you were, high tech in 2009, admittedly, that was definitely lagging at that point, but it was clear. It was clear that the fecal matter had struck the rotary oscillating device. Because that was one of the grimmest trade shows I've ever been to in my entire life. Yeah. But in terms of as an indicator of the state of the industry, is Is the industry strong? Is the industry slowing down? Is the industry speeding up? Where do you see it going based on what you saw, or is my entire premise BS? Right?
No.
Robert, let's start with you.
Right.
I think in terms of, it wasn't all the booths. Some of them were sadly vacant. And again, I spent a good amount of time going. I actually made it through the entire floor this year, and between going to meetings back and forth, zigzagging across, there were some that were just auspiciously empty, and others that were busy, like consistently busy. So and the consistently busy ones are pushing the stuff forward, and I think that's it. And it was weird, there were a couple that Sabre didn't have a booth, and you kind of go, and I believe they did it. They did it ROK.
I've never seen that happen.
They have skipped in previous years, like 2 or maybe 3 or 4 years ago or something like that. I thought they skipped one. Yeah, but no, Sabre didn't have a booth.
By the way, full just to point that out, they did have a small booth, which, to be fair, they were all small booths. They had a small booth at ROK.
Right? Yeah, they're like tabletop, like little tabletop type things.
So they were an exhibitor at ROK, but that's interesting that they were at ROK.
Yeah, that was interesting. RateGain, who's acquired Disco, and they just acquired BCV, all these things, 10 by 10 booth, little small 10 by 10 booth. And so there was some, the question for me is, oh boy, they don't see value in the show, probably, by doing this or not,
they picked a side,
not being there. I don't know. So those were kind of those.
That's an interesting question. Were people, and Stuart, I'm not going to put you on the spot on this one, as somebody who was a vendor at the show. Chime in if you want to, don't chime in if you don't want to. But obviously ROK and Hi-Tech ran concurrently. Was there any indication that people were sliding resources more to the ROK side of the house because they're selling more to the marketing side of the field now as opposed to the IT team? Or is that just,
No, I'll tell you flat, because you were there, and I can tell you that the representation in the back of the hall of ROK was completely different than the representation that most of them weren't at ROK. I mean, they weren't at Hi-Tech. They chose ROK.
MarTech tends to shift to ROK these days, for sure.
Yeah. And I was, when I was on both of them going between that I was talking to some vendors I was seeing walking the floor, and I said, "Where's your booth?" "Oh, I don't have one here." "Oh, well, we chose to do ROK this year." "Oh, okay." And then by the same token, I'm seeing some vendors that are at ROK, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. So how's everything going with your thing?" But they normally are a participant in ROK in the back, and so we chose to flip over to Hi-Tech this year and see what happened. We can't do both. Yeah. That was the most common statement. Yeah. We can't do both. We can't field two teams.
Well, it's fielding a couple teams.
Right. Yeah. I chose not to. Yeah.
Well, because it overlaps one day. Yeah, it's a problem. You need to bring in.
No, it's two. It is too. All of the training programs and everything else that ROK has is on the day prior, just as much.
Oh, and they had booths. Did they have booths during those two?
I wish they'd shift it one day, the other separated. Because
they used to. Yeah.
Well, it used to be. You didn't interact really at all.
Yeah, ROK one day, and then Hi-Tech started.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I would say last year was the first year I don't know when they started overlapping, but last year, really the last 2 years. So Toronto and Houston, we noticed that Tuesday was solid, Wednesday was very quiet, and Thursday's always vendor day, right? It's just it's a very short day, and it's the end of the show.
Yeah,
right, exactly. So. But this year we didn't notice that, and I think part of that was we did a lot more pre-gaming and setting up appointments and just putting noise out there about what we're doing, and so I mean honestly, Monday for us this year, Tuesday, the first day this year, was better than all of Houston combined, all of Toronto combined, and possibly we got to go back and look, but possibly all of Houston and Toronto combined. Like our Monday, our first day was like great. Part of that is because we had the hottest boo babe in our booth, Lauren Gray. The drawer of the show, right?
But did Lauren's security detail? Did the security detail and the groupies, keep some of the prospective clients away just due to the crowds?
For those of you who've never met Lauren in person, I can't imagine anyone who watches this show who has never met Lauren in person. Lauren is. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Is like 6'12" and
he's a giant.
40 rock hard muscle. If Lauren Gray needs a security detail, I can only imagine what those guys must look like.
Yeah. He's like a black belt in multiple disciplines of
Correct.
martial arts.
Lauren Gray is
Yeah.
a security detail all by himself.
Yes, yes.
For sure.
But when Lauren
US
is
Secret
carrying,
Service and Chuck Norris are both in fear of Lauren Gray.
well,
right.
they would be, except Lauren has a 400-pound backpack, which does somewhat limit his mobility. So,
That's my tortoise
That's
shell.
funny.
I'm a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
That's my tortoise shell. Hey,
Literally, he does that for everyone else's protection. Basically, that is Lauren's
right.
version of tying one hand behind his back.
that's right.
I see.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a fair fight.
That's funny.
All right,
that in
so-
mind,
so I want to go back to the question. So, Robert, you chimed in. Lauren, state of the industry, your take on it based on what you saw.
I do think that it reflects it. I do think historically has reflected this, and I would say that the feeling I got from this show was it was pensive. There was not that new flurry of things, as if there's a lot of companies out there that are saying, "Hey, I got this new product." People are like, "Yeah, I'm not going to fund it," or you know what? I just don't think even if we stepped into the market now, there's going to be enough market in the future. Everyone's waiting for that other shoe. Everyone's beginning to honestly think that within 24 months it is going to change for us. And so if for new companies, 24 months is a blink of an eye. And
Right.
so a lot of things that are coming up. So there is this maturation of current services, plus also too, as with social in our world, more communication has happened within our industry, and there is a groundswell of consistent noise to the PMSs, to the legacy systems that says we're looking at this and we're saying, you know what, you are a causation of our problem. So either you merge up and start doing something, or places like Happy are going to find solutions for us, and we don't need you anymore. We're going to find other ways. So I think that kind of comes through a little bit. And also, I'd have to say one other thing that is reflective is the traffic flow within high tech is another barometer I've often had.
Yeah.
When it's all happy land and everything, you want to hit everywhere and everything. It's like candy land everywhere. Every row has something new and adventurous to find. This one, Stuart hit a sweet spot. He was midsection right, and that seemed to have a very consistent traffic flow because you've seen them, and there wasn't large displays in the place, but there was fewer of them, and they're usually dead center, boom, dramatic, and then they try to spread them out to make you walk out, in the back and so forth with these other huge displays. There was only a few predominant displays within high tech. They really stood out. Microsoft always eats up a whole, if you want to call it city block, those kind of guys and so forth, but not a lot of them. Not a lot of them. I remember one year back where there was like 4 or 5, 2, 3-story presentations, where people were sitting up looking down at the little people, there was only one this year kind of thing. And it was very small and it was very unengaging. And, there was booths. And that was the other scary part, DirecTV and all these other ones used to have these massive booths. Well, they still had a moderate sized booth, but they were like ghost towns. There was 10, 15 people in DirecTV shirts and not a person was there to talk to them. Meanwhile, you go to, I'm sorry, what's the name of it with Henry Woodman? Shinji? No, Shiji. Thank you. Totally blanks out. And it's a mob. I mean, every table they had was full, and people were standing around waiting to talk. And it was a.
To be fair, Shiji was like 7 different vendors in one.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Shiji invests in a number of things. So.
Yeah.
And they were dead, and they were in the back row, dead center. They were the last thing you would see before going to the bathroom.
It was a bad location for sure, but they seem to have the foot traffic.
Yeah,
Right.
but no, Stewart had a great location. But yeah, that's what I thought of it.
Yeah, location's everything. We're going up from last year we had a 10 by 10. This year it was 10 by 20 on the corner, and then next year we were looking at going 20 by 20. But then when we looked at what's left in the 20 by 20s, they're all at the very back, and you wouldn't get a lot of foot traffic. So instead we're going 10 by 30, and we're actually going to do a dual show with Blue Shift on one side and Fuel on the other. So we're going to take up half each because.
And
we feel
Lauren,
like they can get more play there.
Fuel has a 10 by 10, Blue Shift has a 10 by 10, and Lauren gets the 10 by 10 in the center.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's probably
Trying to
true.
figure out the layout.
I think they're reassessing the quality value proposition of occupying space for me. I think that's going to be under evaluation this year.
Well, but actually, you mentioned the whole partnering thing, though. I was expecting Tim to mention leading hotels of the world and their approach to world travel market, right? Because leading for decades. Oh, maybe you never went to World Travel Market with Lee. I don't know. Maybe they never let you
I
out.
only went one time, and I spent almost my entire time not in the booth. I spent most of my time at meetings with, hotels and things along those lines, and frankly, heavily intoxicated. No,
if you hadn't added that last part,
some things have not changed.
No. If you hadn't added the last part, I was going to say that's code for the bar.
Well, and let's be fair. Anybody who has ever been to World Travel Mart, let's be really fair. This industry certainly has a reputation for folks who are not afraid to throw down a little bit. And then there's World Travel Mart, which is a whole other level.
Whoa. And then there's ITB Berlin.
ITB, right.
Correct. Yeah. I've never been to ITB, but I've certainly...
You have never been to an ITB? Oh, my God. Wow.
Sounds like a road trip for all of us. Road trip.
I certainly have my fair share of colleagues, running into them drying out a week later. So I...
Oh yeah.
Let me have a recovery period.
I was going to say though, what Leading did, because they have all these 5-star hotels, they would have a very large, always a very nice booth, but all these hotels would have these little kind of desktop-y type things, which was great because it was the hub, and then you could come in and meet with. Instead of trying to find these guys where they might be, and it's too expensive for these,
Correct.
Even though they're great, well-funded, big marketing budget hotels from around the world, it's just crazy. And all of a sudden they can consolidate the demand, similar people, commonality between, very, very effective, approach.
We actually did that, and I say we did that. I had nothing to do with this. That was a thing Leading has done at many events. For decades, and it's always been about how do we help the hotels sell themselves as individual independent properties. So nonetheless, all right. So
let me add one more thing to the other thing. We all made the same comment that the parties this year were combined parties. So there was a lot of combined parties, which was different. I just want to make sure
that's a cost strategy, right? Because you get the same bang for your buck, but the bucks you're spending is a little low.
And you don't wind up with an empty party because there's 17 of them going on at the same time, and people. I think I don't know what the average. That would be a very interesting statistic, which I'm sure HFTP doesn't really track because it isn't really their thing. But how many parties did the average person attend? And it was probably maybe 2 a night, maybe. But again, people aren't hitting 4 and 5 and stuff like that. So they got to consolidate, I think. So
can I, really quick before we jump to the next question, one comment I want to make on this overall feeling of it was, more of an evolution than a revolution. I think one of the conversations I had a lot at this year's show with hoteliers was the technology in the past that's been there and been bright and shiny has been more of like a single feature than a full product. It's something, you look at folks like TripTease, right? They've come out with this rate comparison stuff, got a lot of buzz early on, and people have it, and then, but there's a plateau of how effective that is. And there was a lot of bright and shiny stuff in the past that I think people would jump onto and install because it sounded cool. There's a lot of Laurens in this world that just see something shiny and say, that's really awesome, I need to do that. Without a strategy, right? They spend the money, they deploy technology, and then sit, and nothing really happens because they're not putting focus on the plan on how they use it. So we had a lot of conversations this year about, whatever the technology is, you need to approach it from a how do I maximize the capabilities of this tool, and how do I do it in a way that improves the customer experience. And we had a big feisty debate on last week's show about chatbots. And that's a technology that we saw a ton of players in that space. Mobile apps is another one. There was a ton of apps, and it's shrinking. There's not as many players, but the ones that have survived and the ones you talk to, they approach it differently. They approach it the way we approach the booking engine. Booking engine isn't just a widget that sits on your website. Booking engine is part of a customer journey, and you have to make it integrated through the entire flow and reduce friction and improve the experience. So I think that's when I say the technology is maturing, I think that's why, because people are realizing it's not just software, it's software with a purpose and a strategy. And that was what I was seeing a little bit more at this show this year. Less bright and shiny.
Got it. So here's what I heard you guys say, and I just want to make sure again I'm recapping appropriately. That folks were being a little more cautious. That if we were going to describe the state of the industry, it's people are taking a more wait and see, keep some powder dry, right?
Yeah.
More focused on controlling their costs, which again it might be a sign of being somewhat cautious and being clear on what's going on there. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting, and to be fair, I don't want to read too much into the state of the industry from this because this is only the second or third year that Rock and Hi-Tech have run concurrently. People were, the vendors were making choices about where they exhibited. Now that could be that it was a cost control. It could be that it was, they're being conscious of where the market might go and trying to be smart about it. And it could just be, now we're not going to pay for two different shows because we're going to be talking to the same people twice.
Yeah, same audience. Yeah.
The same
and
audience.
To be fair, Hi-Tech is it's not an inexpensive investment, right? Because not only are you securing the space, but the booth, the shipping at the booth, the outrageous prices for the carpets and things like that. I mean, and they'll charge you ridiculous amounts. So there's a lot of people there. I'd probably have 5 different booths borrow. We bought a little $15 hand vacuum because if you don't want mess all over your carpet every day, they'll charge you like $200 a day to just come and vacuum your thing real quick.
Right.
It's like $50 for a trash can just to have a cardboard box. But there's a lot of like hidden costs, and when you total it all up, I think we looked at getting Wi-Fi. We ended up opting for just a mobile hotspot because the Wi-Fi there is trash because there's so much interference between all the signals. It's always really bad, but it's really expensive. Like if you wanted a dedicated multiple point, really good high bandwidth connection, it was like $15,000 this year. It was stupid money.
Julie, what interesting I said for them to have Wi-Fi for their back of the house engagement, not the generic one that they had to pay, that they needed to pay for people to engage with at the show itself, but to have it in the back was $30,000 for them to have a back of the house Wi-Fi.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Welcome to the convention center business model.
Yeah, but
so they rent 42-inch TVs for $500. Okay, so we went to Best Buy and bought a 49-inch for $300.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and I don't want to make a prediction that I don't want to get way ahead of the things here because we're probably 3 or 4 years before 5G is really a thing. But I mean that is clearly something that is not sustainable at some point in the not too distant future. It's not going to be next year. It's probably not going to be the year after that. But maybe you get a couple years down the road. And that's not.
Our mobile hotspot was faster than the Wi-Fi there.
And it was. It did great. We did some live streaming off of it.
We did a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Oh. And for people, just to know that I'm going to be posting them. I did some 360 walkarounds, just if you want to feel like what it was like to walk around on the floor in the show and stuff like that. And I'll post them up just for people who have not been to Hi-Tech, just to see, the Disney Wonderland of it all kind of thing. I'll post them up on the show links on this when I get them loaded up so that people can see them. So
cool. And I'm sure we're going to want to get at least a couple other topics in, but I have one last question for you, and this is going to be really quick. This is sort of the lightning round question for each of you. Which is,
Lauren's going to win the lightning round. That's not fair.
By the way, we came up with Lauren's superhero name this week. He is Lightning Rod.
Lightning Rod.
Lauren used to dance under that name, I thought.
Exactly.
So,
Oh yeah, well, everyone has a stage name, but yeah.
I'm waiting for the comic book, Lightning Rod.
Exactly.
Nonetheless, if you had to sum up, one big takeaway or one thing that people should know about Hi-Tech or the meaning of Hi-Tech or what you took from Hi-Tech, you could pick any one thing. But just one, Robert.
See, I have 2.
No, but just one thing that people should have as a takeaway. What would it be? What would you tell people they should know because Hi-Tech happened?
What they should know? Oh, I thought you were going the direction of why people should go to Hi-Tech or not go to Hi-Tech.
Oh, I mean, you can do that if you like.
That's kind of why I had 2. The why you should go is not necessarily something. So it's the networking, right?
Right.
I mean, it's
sure.
it's the whole thing. Focusrite conference, same thing. Yes, there's a bunch of content. Focusrite, they live stream it all now, right? All the main sections.
Yeah.
So you can get all that stuff, but you can't go walk up and speak with, you know, the CEO of Jonas, the CEO of, you know, OTA Update, the COO for North America of Shein. They're all there. They're accessible, right? And that's great. So I think that's the big one. And the second one, I really think that it's going to be very interesting. That before, you always criticize companies, especially startups, going, you know, you're a feature, not a business sort of thing. And that was really kind of the case of this whole kind of microservices type thing and acquisition. This is going to get very interesting. So I think with this data bus, if you do kind of break down these legacy traditions, all of a sudden there may be some really good innovation, but it's also going to get vacuumed up by the big guys, right? Or whoever sort of thing. So I think there are going to be some really interesting dynamics, but it certainly doesn't look like some of the groups like Shiji and stuff are planning on interfering and curtailing the development of these companies to fit the corporate mold or not to hurt another one of their products, or kind of the bad things a lot of these big, you know, conglomerates kind of do. As far as my conversations with RJ Friedlander, who Shiji, you know, acquired Review Pro, and Henry Woodman acquired Ice Portal. They're doing what they've been doing, and they've got more funding and a better scale and the ability to network with these other customers from, you know, the other product. That seems to be a great thing. And Shiji doesn't seem to be messing with it, right? And going, well, yeah, let's go break this down.
They're taking the Warren Buffett approach.
Yeah. But I think also
on their business.
And I think what Shiji's going to do underneath is architecturally now be able to go, okay, now let's get these into services that can be shared across all these different platforms and get the benefits, you know, within their little ecosystem. So anyway,
I think Jonas is taking that same approach. I spoke with
Jonas
a lot of
is doing the same thing.
Acquired, and they're like, Jonas is not dictating to us. And it was surprising because when I went there, I don't know if you guys noticed this, it was jarring to see a Jonas single booth, and it had MSI, Springer Miller, and then Quorum, which is the new web-based PMS that spun out of MSI. But it was one color booth, had all three logos, and then all the staff from both were wearing a similar uniform. So I was like, whoa, what are you, this is a message here that you're sending, that you're one big family. And I get the value of saying you're that, but it to me, I was talking to the Springer Miller guys and the MSI guys separately and was like, do you feel like you're losing some of the brand identity a little bit? And then I talked to the CEO of Jonas himself, and he said, this wasn't a Jonas mandated thing. This was MSI and Springer Miller's heads decided to do it this way. Jonas would prefer them to keep individual brands. So, you know, I think they're really strategically trying to do the Warren Buffett approach too, which is we'll buy great companies and let them do their thing, and then look for complementary products and integrate together and provide better value proposition. But we don't want to mess with what make these companies purchasable in the first place. And
then help them with the plumbing, right?
They can offset some of you know, there's things that they struggle with. You know, they can offer, they do consolidate accounting and some of that stuff, but they can also offer marketing and sales and things that they might need some injection in.
I only have one. My whole thing is probably more existential. Is just it's a storybook. It's a chronological history of the technology within the industry. If you go to these long enough, where you keep persisting with it, to your point, Tim, you begin to feel a vibe as to what's focused on, what shouldn't be focused on, what the progression of usabilities are. But if you just look back 5, 10 years, or even just if you go once or twice, you see transitions of focus. You know, sometimes it's shiny object focus, and like this year, I think it was less, to Stuart's point, less a shiny object thing and more of a maturing thing. Let's start getting ourselves better coordinated. Let's start doing better things. You know, the collaborations and so forth. So, you know, next year is going to be completely different. So if for those to attend, it's going to be stepping into a fast-moving river if you've never been to it before to see what it's like. If you've been to it before, it's kind of like rolling down the river and seeing the change in scenery. You know, it's a storybook.
Actually, just one other point. The one big difference I saw from last year was the real hot one was the staff alert buttons, right? For any sort of sexual harassment.
Well, that one of those won Best in Show this year for the 20X. It was one of those alert buttons.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
I forget the name of the brand. Yeah, but they did.
But see, I look at those and going, boy, that should be a service. And you look at something like Beekeeper, you go, okay, well, yeah, you have some service that does this. And if people are, all your staff have their own iPhones, right, or whatever they're doing, you can have some things where, phones have like the 911 emergency, but you can wind up probably having some applications that wind up being able to do some things like that then tie into other services, right?
Yeah, I think the thing with the buttons though, and why there's so many of them have come out of the woodwork really quickly is legislation is forcing it, right? So with something like Beekeeper, it's gonna grow organically based on the value proposition. But it's just like when hotels had to do things for ADA compliance, like put in chair lifts.
Yeah, they got to do it.
Stuff, right? They don't have a choice. In certain big markets, they have to have these panic buttons. So there's a lot of vendors that taking advantage of that. The one that won, and I really can't remember the name, I need to look it up, but their solution was really a little unique because they just said, I want to make it as simple and cost effective as possible. We're not going to over engineer this stuff. We're just going to make it function the way it needs to meet the requirements. So it was using low light Bluetooth. You have a little beacon in every other room, or if you have certain Wi-Fi providers, you can use the Wi-Fi and it can connect to those. But basically it tracks every employee where they are on property, and they just press a button and it alerts the staff. It was no more complicated than that. So they won 20X because they have the opportunity to grow very rapidly.
But you have to go install the beacon. It's their beacons, I'm sure, right?
It is. It's part of the software as a service.
Not super expensive. Yeah.
Beacons are almost turning generic, though. Beacons are almost turning generic. There's 5 flavors of beacons now you can get. Most of them are intertwined anyway.
It was like $6,000 a year or something ridiculous. It was not a big investment.
Right. So let's flip things around and go from just to cover up on the Rockside and HS Message. You were dedicated to being to that, Tim. And I know the content's completely different than attending a conference show.
Can I answer the previous question first?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry,
so I think, and this is a bit of a downer to leave it on, right? So I think my biggest takeaway is one of concern for the industry, right? So I think it's fair to say that as an industry, from a technology perspective, hospitality is behind a lot of other industries, and we've talked about why that is, and the PMS. The old PMS is being part of that problem, but there are other problems too. And I think we're at a point in the industry where everyone's beginning to come in an alignment behind, okay, lack of integration is probably one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest reasons we're in that situation. And so I think everyone's gotten to that point, and then they're saying, okay, the solution is some kind of universal standard for that. Right. But we're doing in the industry, I feel like what we always do in the industry, which is this 7 or 8 major players and they're people that have rolled up a bunch of companies or new startups. It doesn't matter. But they're all trying to solve the same problem, but they're all trying to solve it in different ways. So we're going to end up trading one set of problems for another set of problems where we're saying there's not a standard. So let's create a standard. But when 20 people are creating a standard, there isn't a standard. So we're going to end up in the same situation where people are boxed in with their technology based on which tech stack they decided to go with first. So I give the industry credit for saying, hey, let's solve it. But I wish it's amazing because this hospitality industry knows each other so well, and yet is so reluctant to work together on a solution. Like if 5 major players came together and said, here's the real, and HT&G, to their credit, tries to do it, but for everyone that's behind HT&G, there's half the people don't want to get behind it, right? So because they want control and they want power. I wish we could come to a consensus.
Thank you for teeing this up. Thank you for teeing me up, Stuart. Okay, so I'm co-chair of the HT&G work group for a unique identifier for each hotel. And simply put, it's a registry. It works like DNS does for IP addresses and websites and things like that. And
you're creating
some of the people watching the what?
The CUSIP number.
Yes, there would be every hotel
for those who don't know this, if you're a stock, stocks change ticker symbols, things along those lines, but every stock has a CUSIP number that always stays attached to that company.
Right. A persistent number identifier. Yes, exactly. And so what we're looking at, and this has been tried a few times before, and it has been grossly botched, right? So all this does is create a persistent identifier, but it does a couple of things. When you do this, just like DNS, where a DNS record says, oh, here's an MX record that points over to the mail server. Here's another one that points over to where the website is and things like that. You can have that. And then all of a sudden, when you do that, if you're participating, oh, you can enable, say, if someone is, and these pointers would be, oh, they are on version XY, whatever, 14 BC of Oracle or something like that. And here is the resource that it points to, right? And then they can go authenticate onto that through, third-party systems through the owners of those resources. But all of a sudden, if you have that sort of thing, you can have automatic notifications. So I was speaking to the Beyond TV guys, right? Just going, hey, would an ID be even important to you? Expecting them to go, no, makes no sense. The guy's like, that would be huge because we get calls about you can't check out from the damn TV. Well, why? Well, the PMS updated and nobody told them, right? And it breaks and then it's all reaction. Or the TV service doesn't work because, again, something changed with the PMS or some provider and the version changed and it blew everything away and it was some sort of unintended consequence. Nobody knew that particular deprecated feature drove all the in-room television, which is a bad thing when they can't turn on, right?
So how are you going to, right? I think everyone agrees with that. It's probably something that would help the industry, but how are you going to get buy-in from all the PMS companies? Because if you don't, then it doesn't work.
We have PMS companies who want to run the whole thing where it's like, no, I'm very sorry. All the PMS companies seem very, very interested in this because this can also facilitate continuity of here's where my stuff is before, like all the POS, all the interfaces they have strung off of there. All of a sudden they can maybe go, oh, that's the stuff they have. We have interfaces to those things. So all of a sudden it can streamline their cutover processes. Plus, when you change brands, the flag change issue is a real big one because some of the stuff stays the same. Some of the stuff that changes may be able to blow away, a bunch of things.
So it's the ship of Theseus problem, right? It's right where sorry, I like boats apparently. So
tell us more. What about the ship of feces?
It's one of my favorite thought experiments. I use it a lot.
This is literally my favorite philosophical discussion in history. But this is a very real problem about what you're talking about. The idea is there was this dude Theseus in ancient Greece. You could apply this to anything, and he had a boat. And every time he came back from a voyage, they removed some planks from the boat and added new planks. And at what point did it become a new boat? Right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same kind of thing. You reflag, you do whatever you change ownership, you change management companies, you do any of these things. At what point is it a different hotel? Right.
Right. Yeah. And this winds up keeping, at least in terms of the tech stack on the back end and distribution on the front end, at least gives it kind of a touchstone that you can do. The interesting things that we're doing, not to speak too far out of turn, is you go, oh my God, you got to go get a number for everybody. That's difficult. That's not really the issue. We can figure out where all these hotels are and pre-assign all the numbers. And I think the laggers, the vendor community, seems to be the ones who are going, we have pain, we have direct cost savings or revenue opportunities by doing this. So we're going to address kind of them first and getting the stuff, and we'll let them use it. And if the hotels decide, oh, we want to stay on the sideline, we don't want to claim our ID and then proactively manage it, that's fine because the vendor community will tie into it and be using it on their own. And it's like, that's okay. So I think between some of those, making it a nonprofit where it can't be acquired and having some things, and just sticking to being a registry as opposed to, hey, we're going to go do, here's services layers and here's a business and, ooh, we'll have a universal cache for distribution. All sorts of folks can go develop off of that. But you can't do any of that stuff. I think what everybody's kind of concluding, at least in terms of my conversations, and I was running around asking people to punch holes in it, and if they had no value, tell me it's no value. My feelings won't get hurt. Let's figure out reality here. They all said, you can't do any of this other stuff if you don't have this consistent ID. You need something to tether these things to, and that's why you've had all these fiefdoms. So I'm feeling, actually coming out of it, I'm feeling more optimistic than going in. And again, I've been kind of maybe 60% optimistic, knowing there are a lot of landmines. But boy, the conversations with the tech guys going, tech is not the issue. We can do the technology. That's not.
It's standards.
Zero.
Standards is the issue.
Well, and HTNG has a ton of standards, and Open Travel has a bunch of standards,
right.
but they're all optional. But they're all optional.
And no one
they're
uses
all
them.
optional.
Right.
Oh well, no. On the distribution side,
these are. I mean,
they're
if
not.
I can make a bold statement, these are never technology problems. This is a people problem. This is a consistency problem. This is an operations problem. Operations in the sense of people following the standards.
Right.
Yeah. And here's the problem. Right? We integrate with
works really well.
Yeah. So we integrate with tons of PMSs or just different vendors that use the HTNG standard, but then it's like, well, we do, but then we found that this is a better way to do it for us. So it's like a quasi version of the standard.
That's what they had before,
right?
And they couldn't really do the standard. And in those standards, almost all the fields are optional, right? Because they didn't want to lock it down and go, sorry, Oracle, you really are doing it wrong, and you're out.
The problem is the naming of the fields. The labeling itself is a problem because every PMS has a different nomenclature. Like what they call a rate code is different in every PMS. Like how they refer to packages is different.
So what we were thinking is, if you have a unique, this unique ID is for the hotels, but then all of a sudden, if you start having this ecosystem where you start mapping the version and the the pointer, the URI, where they can get those resources for the API, there will naturally then be the ability to start mapping out, here's how it maps the standard, and here are the fields that we have, and it translates from this and this, and you wind up using pointers and translators. Now, is that 100%? No, but we think it's probably, from a development perspective, not full interfaces, but kind of adapter level stuff where you can go, you know what, these guys are 99%, but here's the adapter that really lets these square pegs fit into the round holes, right? Because that's where the problem is.
Robert, you may be doing this already, but if I can offer a thought, and again, you may already be onto this, but I would follow the Internet Engineering Task Force model of rough consensus and running code.
Absolutely.
Because the harder the standard is, the harder it is to get anybody to follow.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we're focusing on the minimum viable product is the registry. That's it. Build the freaking registry, get it working, let people use it, right? And let the partners go in and say, and if some big hotel company looks at this brand particularly and goes, oh, that might help people get away from us, as opposed to, well, wouldn't that help people come onto your brand easier? I mean, it's a kind of a two-way street. I think a lot of this gets masked in fundamental business weaknesses, right? The ones who are afraid of this is you may have a problem with your product and your strategy has been vendor lock-in, right? Which has been the PMS, that's been the business model for decades. So I think that does it. And same with the PMS vendors, the ones who go, we don't want to do it, we're afraid of it. I was not running into those guys. They seem to be embracing it, which was more than I expected. I expected more fear and loathing and things like that. So, but we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's the magic wand that all of a sudden you've got rainbow pooping unicorn sort of thing once you do this.
That should be this week's episode, by the way.
Exactly.
Once upon
one hit rock. All right.
Okay, wait. The open. I was on the. Hang on, one last thing.
Hit rock. No, Robert, hold on one second. If you want to hit rock and you want me to have any point of view on this, we have to do it in the next 4 minutes because
Okay.
25 minutes.
Out the door, so.
It's as bad as me and my boss last week.
Okay.
All right. You have
No, you were there for the whole spectrum. Where I was there for pieces and
Tell
parts.
us about rock.
Tell us about rock.
I thought rock was very, very good. What I like about rock, there are a few things that I love about rock. So first of all, much like high tech, you get some really great people in the room. The networking is outstanding. These are practitioners. These are people who live it all day, every day. It tends to be mid-career folks, generally speaking. You don't get the most senior people, but you do get the people who are living it as their day-to-day lives. As you might imagine, as a show dedicated to revenue management professionals, it is exceedingly practical, and I mean that as in the best possible way. It's not very abstract. It's not, let's talk theory. It is, here's how you drive more revenue to your hotels. Here's how you maximize yield. Here's how you work practically across the silos within your organization to be more effective at what you do. What I would love to see at Rock, what I found missing was I saw a number of presentations that were very clear on, here's how we at this hotel make money, which was great. I would love to see a little more counterpoint of, we have this very fee heavy approach. We think fees are really, not a good idea. Battle it out, right? Like, let's have some discussion about strategically, how do we think about, how we price and how we charge and how we demonstrate value to the guest in a more holistic way, where there'd be more dialogue and debate about that. So I think it's a great conference. I think there's great people in the room. The networking is spectacular. The insights in terms of how you do it all day, every day is phenomenal. I would also like to see it add more. Let's talk, and I realize I can be a little philosophical, I can be a little theoretical, but a little more discussion of how this fits into the bigger picture than what I saw, right? To be fair, there were a couple of very good presentations that did go in that direction. I just didn't think there were enough of those, Our good friend of the show, Dan Waxman, did a great presentation about, how marketing and rev management can work together more effectively, which I thought was very, very good.
I heard the closing keynote was really top drawer. I wasn't there, but yeah, it was. I heard it was awesome. Tim, did you see it? I don't know.
I did not see it, no.
Oh, okay. Tim was giving it. That's why. So,
I was not the closing keynote. Let's be very fair.
I'm sorry.
These were
I thought you were the last
I was the last speaker, but these were lightning round presentations. This was the Ketchu. I don't know how you say the word. It's a format where you do 20 slides. Each slide auto advances after 20 seconds. So it is a 6-minute, 40-second presentation. And the slide goes whether you're ready or not. So you need to be concise. You need to make your point within the 20 seconds you have for each slide.
I want to see Robert try that. There's no way in hell.
I've done them before. No. When I speak, I always hit the time. I never run over.
Actually, Robert does.
Robert never runs over. That is absolutely true.
That is absolutely true.
Like a clock.
He just resets an hours.
The content may be correct. No, and I complete everything that I was going to speak on. Also, I cover all the slides in the assigned period because I kind of rehearsed before, which I asked Tim if he rehearsed. He said that that was a problem with Rock earlier, where when they did those things, people were getting up there and not having and it was ugly.
Actually, you cannot. I'll tell you what. If I can give, I think I'm an okay presenter, and if I can give one bit of presentation skills advice to anybody watching the show, if you do anything like this, or even if you don't do this format, stop using speaker notes on your slides. Because if you're If you're relying on reading from the script while the slide is on screen, you're screwed if the slide goes away for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
The slide should be there to support what you're saying and help you remember what it is you want to say, but don't be reading at any point. There was one speaker in the lightning round who had great content and was a good presenter, had good material, but when he would often the slide would advance before he'd completed speaking the notes. He wasn't reading, he was just using the notes to get him through what he wanted to say. And when the slide advanced, he was himself suddenly going, crap, I don't know how to transition this now.
He wasn't hearing what he was saying. He was only saying what he was saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so that's something that just as a presentation skills, don't rely on the notes being there. Know your material. Know how you're going to get through it. But it was fun. Yeah. I thought it was a very good show. Lots of good people there. Really smart folks. Yes. Lots of really, really good, practical, usable advice and tips and techniques and things like that. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I would also, if I would add one thing that can make it a stronger show, I'd love to see more discussion of why do we price the way we price and how do we show value to our guests in a way
absolutely
that's a little broader, right?
I'd love to see that from a vendor perspective. I'd love to see Duetto and Ideas and Rainmaker get up on the stage and battle it out in an MMA. It's just tell me why you're better than you. Why you rather than it? What does you do? Because they all are strong players in the space when it comes to their software engagements with revenue managers and so forth, and they're predominant at this conference. I mean, they know their market. Sure. They know their market. I'm not going to be negative about anything. They know their market. Well played that they're there. But there's this constant, you literally have to walk up to one and then walk up to another, then walk up to another and ask the same question to see what the answers are that you have to draw your own comparison to. It'd be kind of fun to say, great, let's go over and, sorry about that. Let's go over and have you guys talk in front of us, compare, make the comparisons.
I will tell you,
I think all of them are good.
The show, I don't know that they would. I don't know that that's in their best interest to do.
It's not that, but it's in the interest of the participants. Is what I'm saying. It's
but if they didn't sponsor, I don't know that Rock would be as strong as it is. So I want to be,
all of those are good platforms, though, right? They're all good. Are they perfect for other ones? Yeah, right. You can get into the optimization. The killer on all of those platforms, and all of them will say, if the hotel has a bad strategy of doing it, it's like, AI is great, but what are you using for training data? What are the algorithms? What are the outcomes you're looking for? That's the important stuff. So Tim, I agree. I think the stuff about how do you make this broader? How does it tie into the business model, the customer engagement, customer sentiment of, customers hate resort fees. They will pay them, if they have to. They don't like them. Okay, is that okay? Is that not okay? And how do you do a lot of these?
Well, I have a strong opinion about this, and there's tons of research that backs this up. This is not just my opinion, right? But customers never want to talk about price. They always want to talk about value. When customers say the price was too high, it's because they did not get the value they expected for the price that they paid. Right. When they say they said that the price was a really great deal, it meant that the value exceeded what their expectations were. And while I think many of the folks who presented, referred to that at least obliquely, I would love to see more discussion of that broadly, not just at Rock, but in the industry and in rev management as a practice more generally, because I think that's a thing we miss sometimes.
Yeah, the whole value creation model and executing on that is is rough. So, but again, the hotels on the other side, they still need to know what's happening from a gross operating profit, net operating profit, and that's the industry's not there yet either on that, right? So there are lots of how do you make this stuff happen? And as Lauren said, and then what tools help you connect those two thing. So I think you wind up with like 3 pillars in there, right? I think.
And if I can give one other free piece of advice, I've done tons of vendor selection, both in my, when I was working at hotel companies. Obviously, we hired lots of vendors for lots of things. And as a consultant, I've been hired to help with vendor selection processes and RFP processes and a lot over the course of the last 8 years I've been doing this. And I will tell you, most of the vendors in the industry, almost every vendor in the industry, I can't really think of an example of a vendor who just sucks, right? Because you can't. There's too much competition.
Oh, no, I'm just using.
No, I mean, generally speaking, are there ones who are stronger and are there ones who are weaker? Of course there are, right? Yeah. But they all do an okay job. What I tend to find is far more important of whether or not this is a good vendor or a bad vendor is this the vendor who suits what our needs are?
Absolutely.
Do we align correctly? Do we look at the world in the same way? Can we learn from each other? Can they adapt to our changing needs, over time in the right way? Do they provide the level of support we need? Do they take the kinds of direction we want to give them, and do they know how to push back correctly when, we as the hotels are going wrong? That's far more important for long-term success than this vendor's great, this vendor's crap. That just doesn't tend to be the reality.
And there are a bunch of people, consultants in the industry. I'm not one of them. Tim is not one of them. That their product is, we'll do requests for proposals for you. And God knows if you're a PMS, you get a 400-page document, which is like every feature marketing.
Let me introduce you to people who do that.
Go down that path where if you give people, here are the 5 core use cases that maybe they aren't all must-have, right? You have maybe 1, 2, and 3 are, by God, if you can't do this, let's save everyone some time and pain. 4 and 5, and maybe 5's the future one of like, that's on our roadmap. We got to get there. And the best thing is if they can't do it, how do you have a discussion? Okay, you can't do it. That doesn't disqualify you. How do you make that happen? Can you make that happen? What is your process? How do you work with us? How do you do that? And boy, is that revealing for.
Okay, so I'm sorry I did not get the memo on the checkered shirt thing, Stuart. I don't know why we didn't get that memo thing, but just one last point to your thing to it. Let me refine one thing.
These are dad shirts.
Yeah. Okay.
This is I didn't make it home. This was the last shirt left.
The last shirt that's still clean. Yeah. It's one last thing to say is about comparing equipment to things. Every one of them wants to sell you a Ferrari, whether you need. To your point, Tim, scale the service to the need of the client, not sell them the most expensive thing that you can.
Right.
That's what I mean about the revealing part of putting the platforms together. All of them do functionalities, but to allow the clarification of the features that are most useful and functional from them, and have that evaluation process be helpful.
But that evaluation process varies by customer because, I'm going to make a gross generalization. So by definition, this is bullshit, right? You're not going to use 50% of the features that a given product provides, easily. You're not going to use 50% of them. The question is it the right 50%?
Right. And also, is it a Boeing plane that has services in there you don't even know can screw you up and you don't even know what's in there to be done? So to that end, Tim, thank you for being here. I know it's Chicago's pain.
No, it's okay. I love being here. Unfortunately, this specific hotel, I asked if I could get a late checkout. Not only did they say no, they said F no. So I'm excited to start banging on the door any minute now. So,
Tim, where can they find you if they want to look for you?
TimPeter.com.
And you were referred to several times in the Tim Peter podcast of Thinks Out Loud, so that people know that you're there. I'm making sure that gets them the link to 14 people that asked for it. So,
or TC Peter on social media,
or TC Peter on Twitter.
On Twitter.
Tim Peter everywhere else. I don't know why, because I'm an idiot. That's why. All right,
thank you, Tim.
Have a lovely weekend.
Thanks for a wonderful week too. It was great being with you.
See you all next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye now.
Hi. That was a great point he made about the 50%. Yeah, you're only going to use half of it. Yeah. Now that ties into the whole advertising thing, which was, the challenge with advertising is half of it works. The problem is nobody knows which half it is. Right? Yeah. That's
that's not true anymore, right? Because you can actually track stuff unless you're using some BS vanity metrics, then
Right.
you can tell exactly what's
Stuart,
working.
what crazy black magic are you speaking of?
Hey, I don't want to do
Free
disrespect to
software like
Robert.
Google? I don't know.
The late night effort he made to put a list together, which we did not even touch out of the hour and a half. I don't want to be remiss on it. You put some cool stuff together.
Well, no, I just have the rut row.
We can hang, kind of, well, we can just do the rut row too, I guess. I mean, the list will get posted, but
well, no, we can recap them. The interesting one I threw Meininger, which nobody's ever heard of in the U.S. I don't think. They are a combination hostel kind of hotel type thing. My daughter stayed in one in Amsterdam. Really, really solid product. Very kind of flexible, inexpensive, clean, good, engagement. I don't necessarily think they are going to be the big winner and kill all the other companies, but I just think more hotels are going to be more they've got to be more flexible in their customer programming for how you can fit family. Ed's not on, he always talks about the great family rooms and things like that, but building 40 family rooms that in the middle of the week don't get used, how do you manage? Or Citizen M, they only have one kind of room, they aren't really suited to family. How you figure out all that stuff and what you are where it's flexible, I think is huge, and these guys do that really well for one segment of the market. Was why I kind of threw them.
And that's a segment that's really big in Europe. That type of accommodation is very popular in Europe.
Yeah, and it should be in the U.S., which was the second one, which is Oyo. And we've talked a lot about Oyo on the show, and I know people are getting tired of it, but they're putting in $300 million into the U.S. And where are they targeting? They're all center city, downtown markets where they're New York, San Francisco's, which will be very interesting to see how they make that happen, right? And I don't know, maybe they won't be successful. I mean, that is a tall order, but it will be very, very interesting to see, how they do that. So, what were other ones? Oh, Hopper. I love Hopper for air. The hotel side, I don't know. They've finally relaunched their hotel AI. They started out with 25 hotels in New York trying to do it really well. They shuttered that. They've now come back with 270,000 hotels around the world. But
it's a slight step up. Yeah.
Yeah, the next trips that I'm planning for a hotel, Deer Valley, no hotels available. West Palm Beach, no hotels available. Yeah. Fort Lauderdale, they gave me a bunch of Miami hotels, and you're just like, oh, I don't know. I know they're tracking a lot of data, but I'm not sure if they're ready for prime time. We'll have to see. Yep. Yeah. What else? Oh, Facebook's cryptocurrency. That's interesting. Yeah. The only thing I thought was really interesting, Booking Holdings is one of, I think the only travel firm that was one of their launch partners, their inaugural partners. So
yeah,
we'll see. That could be
spending Libra before too long for everything. It'll replace the dollar as the currency for the international currency,
which is
buying
really
barrels of oil in Libra before too long.
Yeah, the company that's having trouble deciding if they should really moderate privacy or content, things like that, is now going to be handling a currency.
So not only do they know everything about you, they know everything about you and what you buy now. So good.
Yeah, and control the currency that you use to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what could go wrong?
Oh, nothing. But there's nothing going to stop it because people prefer convenience over privacy every time, unless they're Ed.
Yes,
that's right. We have not talked about Mary Meeker's internet trends, and they were a couple weeks out because I didn't put it on last week because I hadn't read them. And
I haven't read them yet either.
Yeah, maybe we shall hit those next week. That
could be a whole show. Really.
That could be a whole show. Yeah. And there was an article on the 7 types of artificial intelligence, which I thought was really, really kind of interesting for people just trying to get clarity on here's how this stuff works, kind of, because again, it's kind of thrown around as AI, but there's some nuance in there, and this doesn't go into the real deep weeds of it, but I thought it broke it out, really pretty nicely. There was a really deep, geeky propeller head article on age-related ADR premiums, and that isn't meaning that people charge me a different rate than Stuart. But sorry, Lauren, you're kind of in that middle ground who may not be getting targeted in that. But this is the age of the hotel, and the newer hotels, get higher ADRs than older hotels. But how does that apply by chain scale? Pretty interesting stuff. Not I think mostly for a lot of hotels to figure out, hey, this is kind of a benchmark, and here are kind of the, am I pushing water uphill? Not that it's not possible by doing great service and, having a great property, but these are kind of trends where people like newer, more modern stuff. And now that brings us to the rut row. Ta-da.
Yeah, don't say that you can't get to a public beach would be a good statement to make.
Yeah. The Ritz-Carlton Half Moon Bay is a great hotel. It has been there for a long time, and boy, let me tell you, their core business is all these, Silicon Valley, internet folks. People love it. And when they got built, one of the considerations was you had to provide access to the public beach. And let's just say the management of the Ritz-Carlton didn't want any of that riffraff hanging around their hotel, right? Which the Hawaii hotels run into this all the time, because in many cases, you can't recondition the beach and go build stuff or rebuild the beach, and B, it has to be a public beach. And so, this same thing, except Ritz-Carlton had a little problem, $1.6 million fine. So good for the city or the jurisdiction. If you're building the hotel with a contingency that you have to provide public access, guess what? Maybe you should stand by your commitments. And if you don't, you should get punched. They were issued with penalties in 2004, 2007, and 2011. And I think the local jurisdiction learned that, hey, fourth time's a charm. Maybe if the penalty includes some pain, or it's a material, then maybe that'll get their attention. So.
Okay, so
or maybe it just becomes a tax that they just charge them every year, and they keep paying it because it's worth it to them to pay the fine.
Yeah, pay the fine.
Yeah, well, and that's a problem with like the Facebook and Google stuff. When they misbehave, these things are so big. They go, well, that's $3 billion. You go, well, how many days of cash flow is that? Yeah. And they can look at it and go, okay, mosquito. Okay, yeah. Or it's a cost of doing business.
I have a very important question to ask Stuart. So what is your impression now of curds, cheese curds?
I have a can-do attitude towards cheese curds. They were delicious.
Yeah, I mean, they are.
Okay, wait. Stuart, is there any sort of food that you do not have a can-do attitude toward?
There's really not. So, well, sort of. So when I was dating a girl when I was 16 or 17 and went to the family's house for Sunday lunch, and the mom was saying, is there any food you don't like? And I was like, no, absolutely. I like all food. I'm non-discriminatory when it comes to food. I've even eaten haggis, and I enjoy haggis too. So
you enjoy haggis. Did you know what haggis was before you ate it? That is a big factor. Okay.
For sure. So she pressed me on this. Like, there has to be a food that you don't like. So at the time, arbitrarily, I kind of thought about, well, what are some foods that I like less than other foods? And I just said corned beef. I don't know why. So for the longest time, I told people that I don't like corned beef. Like, that's the only food I refuse to eat. But it's really not true, because recently someone put a plate of food in front of me which had corned beef, and I chowed it down. So no, literally any food. I'm a human garbage disposal. Yep. To the point where in primary school in England, we had school lunches, and you were only allowed to go up one time and get the lunch, and then you go back and get your dessert. And I would always do that. The lunch ladies pretty soon learned that I have a bottomless pit. And so whenever there was a bunch of stuff left at the end, they would secretly call me up, and they just dump it all on my plate. And I would have 5 or 6 desserts some days, to the point where the lunch ladies came to my parents as I was graduating from primary school and going to high school, And they said, we don't know what we're going to do with all the leftover food now that your son's leaving. So, yeah.
Perhaps a homeless shelter or something like that.
See, Stuart, I knew yet another reason why I love hanging around Stuart, because I empathize with all of that. Like, yeah, okay, sure, bring it over, I'll do it. Yeah, okay, fine. You know, I never took food dares. I'm not like drink a bottle of ketchup kind of stuff. But I'll try. If I've never had it, I think it's unfair to say I don't like it if I haven't tried it.
Yeah. For sure.
You know, and then go through. Yeah, there's less preferable things and stuff. I'm not a big, huge liver and onion fan, but then I had somebody make liver and onions. I swear to God, it was like butter soft and tasted amazing.
They did it well.
And it's sometimes a matter of how it's cooked, not what it is so much.
Right.
But I honestly, gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough. I had a wonderful time. We had fun every night we were out.
It was good.
I mean, I know you had to put up with me in my backpack, but
we got to learn a lot of things about you guys, so it was good.
Well, it was the fire marshal coming in, having us move the back, taking 3 of us to move the backpack so it would not be blocking exits and things.
Yeah, but wait, what was Thor's hammer's name again? I forget. What's Thor's hammer's name? Remember?
Yeah,
that one. Yeah. Mirror something or other. That's what it was like. It's like I had everything because I had the whole studio kit in there, which I did not need at HSMI, which pissed me off that I had to carry it around all day for no usage. I should have actually come back to your booth, Stuart, and set up the lights and everything. Just gave you the stuff and said, "Here, run your own lives." You know,
it was fun. Look, we rearranged the booth and put our products in that spot, and it worked.
Here's the concept.
Thank you.
Coat check. They will accept if you can lift it over the counter. You might have to go around and help them place it somewhere. But they could drag it to a corner and give you a tag, and then they hold it. And at the end of the day, you give them your number back, and they
see. I had to do cameras. I had to have something to carry around to Anyways, but it was interesting. There's a lot more contrast between the shows by far. But the city was fun. Minneapolis was fun. We got to walk around everywhere.
I love Minneapolis. I've never been there before. I will not go in the winter just because it gets stupid cold. But I really enjoy.
Oh no, everything's underground, and and there are connections, sky bridges, so you can stay inside.
I did see the sky bridge and stuff. Yeah. But it was really neat.
Can get around
very
most
clean,
of it.
Very friendly. Every person in the hospitality industry that I interacted with was super warm and friendly, and engaging. So it's a great city. I would recommend anyone that hasn't been there to visit for sure.
Mm-hmm. And they have probably the most common sense light rail you have ever seen. You can go the big demand generators are the Mall of America, the airport, the stadium where the Vikings play, the state or the arena where the Timberwolves play, Target Field where the Twins play. The light rail connects all those, and that's one line. That is one line that you can go from the Mall of America all the way to Lowe's, and then they have another line that goes and connects the University of Minnesota and goes out and connects to St. Paul, some suburbs over to St. Paul. So you can go from, City Hall in St. Paul to City Hall of Minneapolis, get to the airport, all these things, and you go, makes it 2 lines. That's it.
Yeah,
and really smartly laid out. And
I was surprised how well it was laid out.
Yeah.
The city itself, everything was within walking distance. I didn't take an Uber one time I was there. I walked from my hotel to the convention to every restaurant that anyone had said, hey, let's go there. All the ball stadiums were right there. A bunch of people went to the baseball game while they were there and saw that mammoth 17-inning game, and they walked there and back. It was crazy how close everything was. Really neat.
And the Nicolay Mall, where you have lots of restaurants, they really shut down a lot of the traffic and things like that.
And that's the part that it's hard to convey to organizers of events, and I'm saying this more directly to Bob at HSMAI, that's still will always be the value proposition of attendance, is the networking and the stories and the engagements you get there. And no matter how much you may broadcast your product, Focusrite made a brilliant decision by saying, here's the content. You're not getting the networking. Here's the content. And
$4,000 to attend the Focusrite conference, and they live stream the presentations, right?
Wow.
I mean, wow. You can see all that, and it's interesting, but you aren't sitting there being able to ask, whatever, a CEO of a major group, what's going on.
As nice as Rock was, it was in a beautiful venue. They gave plenty of ample space. There was a lot of the venue booths in the back. I think they got that down to a fine science now and stuff. They even on the closing sessions that Tim was presenting on and stuff, there's 2 bottles of wine and a bucket of beers at each of the tables because they got figured it out. People like drinking while at the tail end of the project without rushing the bars. There was only 2 bars at the back end of it after this program was over, and they were light used because people had their wine and their beer the whole time anyway.
Right.
So and they do smart things. All that doesn't happen if you're watching it from TV screen. But what does happen is all the people that couldn't justify the $600 or $500 to go there because they weren't of a certain status or report or title level or whatever, but the content would, as Tim pointed out, was incredibly functionally useful, could watch and observe and get the content and justify that maybe that's a missing piece to a puzzle or a reason to push why they want to attend next year. It actually is it's an enhancer, not a diminishment.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the cost isn't just the registration; it's the airfare and the hotel, and the hotels were not cheap. Yeah, Diane having to maybe eat and things like that. Yeah, it's a commitment for these companies to send folks there. So,
Robert, I think you need to do a sidebar business for conferences of how to book your hotel room effectively and sell the service, saying, "Hey, for $20, I'll find you a room."
Yeah, that's not enough.
Oh, I believe you'd find enough rooms really fast. It'd probably be a pretty big moneymaker for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a whole area of the whole booking, the group booking, closed group scenario, which that area has to change radically. It's just there's so much friction. It's just so bad.
Yep. Robert, are you going to start posting your list that you make for us each week on your site?
At some point, yes, but I need to redo my site, and I don't quite have the same developer resources that say Stuart might.
Is there a question in there somewhere?
No, there's no question. No, I am an idiot. I am on WordPress, and I masochistically enjoy figuring out how all this crap, how the plumbing works, right? Painfully
he's always left with spare parts when he's done. That he didn't start with.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm working on a new website, but I still have work to do on it.
So with something like your site, I would assume it's pretty much a brochure site, right? There's not a lot of complex functionality.
There is not a lot of complex functionality.
So why not go with one of these simpler platforms like a Squarespace or something like that? It'll look way prettier, quicker.
Did you miss the masochistic tendency in them?
Exactly. I mean, you would lose the nerdy value of, this is a new plugin I want to use, and how does it work? But
it would get you deployed quicker. Yeah, no, I realize, because I was on I can't remember the names of all of the different I was an early adopter. Well, actually, I'm on Genesis now, and what was the one before that was the big one? The frameworks. Yeah, so I've been a big kind of framework guy, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, we used to make our own, but we've recently switched to Genesis as well. It's just solid. It takes a lot of the legwork out of it, and it's robust, and you're not going to run into the challenges. So if you are on WordPress, I would definitely say pick a good framework like that for sure.
Yeah, and Genesis it's pretty good. Yeah,
it's good. It's got a lot of support, and it's owned by WP Engine now. So if you use WP Engine to host, it's just blazing fast. It's good.
I think that was the key, because they were kind of losing it a little bit in terms of development and things like that. That it was getting rough for them, and I think with the WP Engine to integrate those, because again, tweaking some of the stuff between the hosting capabilities and people using Cloudflare and layered caching, which winds up screwing up all sorts of things. I've learned about all that myself, of what can go wrong. Yeah, isn't that great? But
it is interesting. WP Engine is kind of taking over the world when it comes to this, because and part of the key element is their customer support is so solid.
It's really good. Yeah.
Well, and the other one is Avada. Avada, I think a lot of folks are using that's just more of a theme that has a lot of flexibility. Sort of thing. That seems to be taking over the world, as well. So. Yeah, so I figure WP Engine at some point. Well, I don't know who owns Avada if they're freestanding. I would think they would try to buy Avada at some point.
Yeah,
but anyway, who knows?
Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure the whole week. To say that we had some fun times together is an understatement for me. I absolutely loved the opportunity to get and hang out. It sounded funny. It's like we were laughing about it over dinner, over drinks, over dinner, whatever. It's a lot like we do with the show. It's like okay, it's everywhere. Point here, point there. Talk
like
here,
some of our dinners were more structured than the show.
Actually, probably right, and that was more alcohol involved too.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to take your take like you do your podcast. Let's start drinking before this show, because after all you claim that you've been drinking.
Oh dear! Oh no!
Wait,
no,
wait,
no, no.
whoa! What? You guys aren't drinking before this show?
I was about to say, you can't claim you have been drinking all day if you didn't start in the morning. It's just a rule.
Stuart had assumed everyone was really just loaded when
that was the only explanation.
He had no idea.
I mean,
he had
really?
no idea. Yeah.
Wow. Light, now I know you guys are sober. It's like, huh?
Oh man!
Wow.
Really? They're sober?
How?
Yeah.
Oh, we had some fun conversations for sure. But again, thank you so very much for all of it. Stuart, if you want to know more about Fuel Travel's podcast and everything about Fuel Travel, where can they go, sir?
Yeah, the mothership is fueltravel.com. You can find out all about our cool products, and our podcast is fueltravel.com/podcast, which incidentally, we had a handful of people stop by the booth saying how much they love the podcast, which was great. And I missed a couple of them, but one of them was a professor. I was out talking to other vendors when he stopped by, but he said he tells all his students to listen to the show, which is
Was
really
that
cool.
Dan Connolly from Drake?
I don't know.
Probably.
He's from a school in Florida. Someone gave me his card. I haven't looked at it, but I'm going to follow up with him at some point.
Nice.
But
That's
it was really kind of cool to hear that people are actually listening and getting value out of it. It motivates us to keep going for sure. So fueltravel.com/podcast, or just if you search for hotel marketing anywhere you get a podcast, you'll find us right at the top. So
nice. And
or the guy has figured out. Or I was going to say, or he figured out from a curriculum that his Monday afternoon class, he just turns on the podcast, sits back.
Yeah, we should start charging.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get another 14 at least that I know of, because I have to send a bevy of emails to this morning of people that in Dan Waxman's presentation about the convergence, somebody asked, where are some resources? Yeah. And Dan looks at me when I'm in the front row and he goes, "Just help me here." And I'm like, so I rattled off your podcast, Tim's obviously, and stuff. And they were like, really? And so these people literally came over with cards. Can you send me the links? Can you send me the links? It's like, so you're going to get a bunch of, because I'm sending an email that's going to include your link to the podcast as well. So
I appreciate it.
They're hungry for it. They're hungry for it.
What CPC are you charging, Stuart, for that?
It is 0, but the ROI on that is tremendous. So.